Hey everybody, so Dr. Phil's House of Hatred was a reality television miniseries made in 2006. Dr. Phil invites 6 people to stay in a house in LA for a week. A skinhead and a black person who hates white people, a fatphobe and a fat guy who hates skinny people, a homophobe and a gay woman who hates straight people. This is a social experiment. That's what Dr. Phil calls it. He actually coined that term.
Today in the Dr. Phil house, we start what I like to call a social experiment.
And the purpose is, I guess, to resolve bigotry.
Now, we didn't do this just for the sake of fireworks, although there will be plenty. We did this to help break down the walls of hatred and prejudice that plague all of our lives.
This show was hard for me to find. I've known about it for a few years, but it wasn't accessible anywhere. In the end, I offered $200 to anyone who could find it for me, and luckily, I guess, someone managed it. The version I have doesn't seem entirely complete. All we have is a lengthy clip from the Wayback Machine, remnants of the original series. Some things are out of order or corrupted or straight up missing, so the authentic experience of this show is, as of now, truly lost media. Usually, I try to write videos with some kind of overarching argument, but because probably none of you have seen this show, I just want to walk you through the whole thing. These are 3 of the strangest, most cursed episodes of television I have ever seen in my life. I think there's something unique and interesting about them, and I'm excited to talk about it. I will warn you, though, that at times it's not an easy watch. It's not the easiest thing to sit through. And with that, let's jump into it. Episode 1. Dr. Phil begins the show with a bonding exercise. The first thing he wants the 6 participants to do is establish within 10 minutes who will be bunking with whom.
You have 10 minutes to work it out among yourselves and figure out who's bunking with who. If you can't meet this challenge within the next 10 minutes, you will not receive the key to your room, and you will be forced to crash in the living room together.
The participants start to speak with one another for a moment, and Dr. Phil is just immediately annoyed.
I don't care what anyone says. I won't be in the living room.
You know, it's interesting that these people are supposedly here to make a life-changing effort, but yet they're talking about meaningless chit-chat.
Why aren't they talking about racism, he wonders? Why aren't they drilling down and getting down to the fact that they all hate each other? Why he would expect such a thing, I have no idea. It's plainly not what he asked them to do. It's as though the producers wanted to create this show, saw these people speak for around a minute, and said, this isn't going to work out at all. This show is extremely stupid. Dr. Phil walks into the room and establishes who's going to bunk together.
Well, I hate small talk, chit-chat, and cocktail parties, so I'm not wasting 10 minutes of my life listening to this crap.
Just straight up ignores the thing he said to these people, an amazing start to what he calls his social experiment. One of the first things Dr. Phil says to the group is that he is not confident in whatever is happening here.
You know, I'm going to tell you the truth as I see it, right?
That's right.
That doesn't mean that you got to agree with what I say at all. You may leave here even more entrenched than you were when you got here.
You may leave here less bigoted, more bigoted. You may like fat people more after this week. You may hate them even more. I don't know. I'm just going to leave you 6 crazy kids alone in this house for a week, and we'll just sort of figure it out. Here we come to the introduction of our cast. Short films made to tell us who these people are and who they hate. And through these intros, we discover a kind of fundamental problem with this show. When I describe Dr. Phil's House of Hatred to you, I imagine a few of you had the thought, that's not usually how bigotry works. Like, on one side, we have the people who represent actual, real-world, influential prejudice, homophobia, fatphobia, racism. And on the other, we have the marginalized groups, fat, black, gay. There's an obvious imbalance here between the bigotries that exist and the bigotries that, really don't. Still, you think, maybe they hit the jackpot. Maybe John, the fat person they found, truly does believe that skinny people are evil. Maybe Tessa, the gay woman, believes she's morally superior to the straights. Crazier things have happened. But, no. it doesn't really pan out that way. Look how the show introduces B.
White people are so ignorant because they think they're better, smarter, and more talented than we are. And of course, that's bullshit. I think white people are sociopaths, and I'm fed up to here with all of them.
How it introduces Tessa.
I call straight people breeders because that's all they're good for. Just because I'm gay, I've been spit on, pushed, shoved, and yelled at by complete strangers.
I hate breeders so much. Sure, they say they hate the opposite group, but it's complete nonsense. And when you juxtapose their introductions with those of the actual bigots, the difference becomes even more clear.
I have a big hatred towards homosexuals. I think it's disgusting, detestable, wrong, sinful.
No blacks, no Mexicans, no nothing, just all white.
I would much rather kill myself than be fat.
No matter how hard Dr. Phil tries to argue otherwise, these people just don't actually hate the groups they're supposed to hate. They hate being subject to bigotry, as they repeat over and over.
And I don't like them. I don't like the way they treat me. I don't like the way they look at me. And I don't like the things that they have done to me.
So that includes me, I guess. So you and I got a problem because I'm white.
That's the thing about Dr. Phil's House of Hatred. From its first moments, it cannot conceal the reality that none of it makes sense, that it has no idea what it's actually here to do.
My biggest concern about being in the Dr. Phil house is that I might beat the living out of someone.
I don't want to spoil anything, but she does it too. Tessa beats the living shit out of every other straight person in the house, and it's crazy to watch. Dr. Phil makes the obvious bunking decisions. Everyone sleeps in a room with the person they hate most. Stacy goes with John, Christina goes with Tessa, Gary goes with B. Here's the thing, Gary, the skinhead, apparently went to jail for being violent against black people. He talks about how much he loves to fight them. Phil even tells him, you know, don't hurt people.
We don't get violent. You've gotten violent before, right? You start fights, slug people, all that. That's just not part of this deal. And make no mistake, you attack somebody on my watch, I will put your happy ass under the jail.
And this guy is just going to be sleeping in the same room with a person from the group he's ostensibly brutalized. B seems kind of worried about it, and so am I, frankly.
Does he expect me to sleep in the same room with this guy? This guy can just like slice my throat in the middle of the night.
But I guess it's all okay. It's all fine. You know, Phil told him that he shouldn't do crimes. So Dr. Phil is doing a little looking.
It's all in the looking.
And what he sees through his surveillance cameras doesn't make him all too happy. B and Gary are having an argument, trying to figure out if racism is bad and if white people did slavery.
It was the slaves, it was a black man that brought him over here. She's just ignorant.
It's really productive, but Gary walks away angry and goes to a bedroom with John. There, they form a kind of racist alliance.
It usually feel good that someone else in the house feels the same way.
White power, white supremacy.
And Phil quakes in horror.
People back to their own country. You know what I'm saying?
What is he doing? I mean, he's taken Gary's side in this. That's not even his issue.
What are you doing? Why are you being so racist with each other? When I brought the skinhead into my house, I never imagined for a moment that he could have a negative impact on someone else's behavior. Why are you getting other people to be racist, skinhead Gary? I can't emphasize this enough. We are 20 minutes into this show, and it's already gone completely to shit. It gets worse, too. Later on in the episode, John and B have an extended race fight where he just throws out various white supremacist talking points and high-fives his new racist friend.
This is my country. This is not yours. This is my country.
But you know what Phil said at the beginning, right? We don't know what's gonna happen. You could come in a bigot and leave a normal guy. You could come in a normal guy and leave a bigot. We don't know, and that's what makes this social experiment so important. Okay, where are we going with this? I mean, this episode has been an absolute roller coaster so far, and there's lots of material we could explore, but I have an idea. What if we just bullied the fat guy? What if we just made the rest of the episode about bullying the fat guy and specifically focus on just how fat he is? It could be kind of epic. Okay, I just want to pause here real quick and say something. John, the fat cast member, is also known as Stephen Asante. Years after House of Hatred, he would go on to be on My 600-Pound Life, and he had a somewhat infamous run on that show. Even so, I'm not going to get into John's story here, because I don't think it's relevant to anything I'm going to say. I'm far more interested in the show itself than in any personal evaluation of its cast members. At any rate, I just wanted to say that, because if I don't, it will be distracting to some people, and it'll be the only thing I read in the comment section for the next 1,000 years. My feeble heart can't bear that. Anyway, on with the program. Dr. Phil gives another assignment over the television. You all have to clean the space of the kind of person that you hate.
It's time to get down to the dirty work. This house doesn't clean itself, so you guys have to.
So this is an important bonding exercise, no doubt, and it's gonna make everyone way less bigoted. But John just kind of sits there. After making a cursory effort to clean, he sits on the couch and chills. For this reason, the other participants get really mad at him, and Dr. Phil agrees.
Get up and go to work, John.
But here's the thing, John is 700 pounds. Like, they didn't just find a fat guy to fight against the fat hater on the show. They found someone with a very real disability, one that has extreme and obvious implications on his ability to do physical work.
People busting their ass, cleaning this house from top to bottom.
If you were this happy, you would not. I did the best I can.
So everyone, including Dr. Phil, acting like he's just being lazy is awful. It's an awful thing that's happening here. Also, we have to ask the question, say John was lazy, say Phil was right, and he should be getting off his ass and doing some good old-fashioned Dr. Phil cleaning. What exactly does this have to do with the show? What's the connection here to the House of Hatred? See, I thought John was here because of virulent and very real anti-skinny bigotry.
I'm sick and tired of skinny people putting me down. As far as I'm concerned, they can all go to hell.
You know, how are you helping his progress, Phil? This guy hates skinny people, and you're not doing anything about it. Anyway, we come to the end of the first episode, and it's still just about John. The other members of the house are extremely mad that he smells and won't take a shower.
Hey, John, you ready for your next task? It's getting your ass into that shower.
People of John's size will have trouble fully washing. As he says, it hurts him to stand for that long.
I got a little upset with her because I can't take a shower standing up.
This doesn't matter. John's odor, not his racism or his beliefs, becomes the sole focus of their outrage. At the end of the episode, they refuse to give him food unless he takes a shower.
Hey, she just told John he couldn't eat until he took a shower.
Oh, really?
Did you shower?
No.
What?
That's my thing, yeah.
What? You're not eating until you shower.
He calls security, threatens to go home, and they all act like he's being an asshole. It is genuinely quite hard to watch. Episode 2. We pick up where we left off. Dr. Phil comes to the house because things are getting out of control.
This is out of control. This is absolutely getting out of control.
And what he says to these people is so odd that I think I have to go through it bit by bit. Dr. Phil starts by condemning John for his racism.
Now, what I want to know is why I shouldn't run your ass out of here on a rail right now.
This makes sense, of course. His behavior was completely unacceptable, but it's wild how unresponsive he is to the actual conditions of this house. He never explicitly mentions what the other participants did. They're not allowing John to eat or his refusal to shower, and I have to wonder if that's because there's really nothing he can say about it. This place, the Dr. Phil house, is just a normal residence. Like, literally, they just got a house in LA. People complained about it because there was too much noise. I bring this up because clearly there was no effort to make the showers more accessible to John, to give him a bath that would fit him or whatever. John even seemingly mentions that he can't shower until he has a chair.
I can't do it until I have a chair.
So yeah, you know, whatever smell he might have, it is most directly Phil's fault and the fault of the producers. I imagine they ended up getting him a chair, though they don't mention it, and from this point forward, nobody explicitly talks about the fight they had, the fact that one participant called security. Phil just memory holes it. It's fine. In an extraordinary moment, Dr. Phil plays a compilation of John's least flattering moments.
Let's just take a look at John's most unflattering moments.
And then does this.
Ever heard about Hollywood and the cutting room floor? Well, there you go. That's Hollywood's cutting room floor. That's how famous you got.
That's right. He plays the tape on national television after already showing all of these events in the last episode. Then he takes that tape and says, "See, this is getting left on the cutting room floor," and performatively throws it to the ground. "See this tape? This is going nowhere except on TV."
Well, there you go.
Dr. Phil looks at Gary and asks, "Why are you egging this on? Why are you enabling John to be racist to be?"
What are you doing egging this on, Gary? What you got better sense than that.
And I think this is perhaps one of the least explicable scenes in the entire show. "You should know better," Phil says to the skinhead in his home. Why should he know better? Why on earth should he know better? See, I thought the whole reason you brought this guy on your show was that he was a racist, you know? He has a swastika tattoo. He fights black people. He talks about not liking people of other races. I thought that was the idea for the show. But now we're like, come on, Gary. You're the moral compass here. You're the shining light of anti-racism. You should be calling in your friends. Phil now turns his wrath to B, and you won't believe what he says.
Come on, B. Why would you even dignify him?
He's been doing that all day. I was fed up with it, and I was just tired of it. I exploded.
If you need a miracle in your life, then be a miracle in your life.
I want you to take a moment now and reflect on how truly low we've gotten here. At the beginning of the show, we all at least pretended that B had to work through her intense anti-white racism. Now, the main problem with her, the thing she has to deal with, is that when two racist freaks antagonize her, she gets mad about that. She doesn't like it. Dr. Phil finally addresses the behavior of the other contestants concerning John, but he does it like this.
This is probably his last chance. This is probably his last stop on the subway. What have you done to help him? This is exactly what you believe, right? Just an absolute worthless, no good tub of lard behaving like some kind of idiot.
Yes.
Are you that shallow?
I think this moment is a revealing one and gets at an important issue with John's presence on this show. See, Phil isn't actively racist. Like, he doesn't say anything bad about B. He's not particularly homophobic either, at least not on this show. What he is, though, genuinely, is a fatphobe. John's treatment matters to him, of course it does, but it only matters insofar as it gets John to be less fat, and his weight reflects a kind of moral failure, a simple pathological laziness.
Get up and go to work, John.
To be clear, John is not at a healthy weight for him. I'm not arguing that. I'm just saying that if the entire purpose of your show is to engender compassion for fat people and fight against this woman's irrational prejudice, then it's strange that the entire criticism you have for these people tormenting a fat guy is, how is this going to make him skinny? Everyone needs to be helping this guy get skinny. As I was watching House of Hatred, I spent some time thinking about John, about why he's here. If they wanted to, of course, they could have found a less disabled fat person, one who could more easily clean up, who could take a shower or whatever. But I think John is a convenient choice because he allows Phil, allows the cast, allows the audience to not question their view on fatness. If the only fat person we see has a disability, if everyone, including the person himself, agrees that he has a disability, then we are given permission to see fatness exclusively as a problem to be fixed, a disease that needs a cure. Okay, the meeting with Dr. Phil finally ends. It's the next day, and Tess and Christina are discussing homosexuality.
Gay people, I don't think they're just normal as far as the mind frame goes.
The conversation is scintillating, but then Gary steps into the scene, and he and Christina judge Tessa's sexuality together.
So it's not a disease and it's not a ill. Sorry, I heard you guys out there. No. What is it?
The conversation that me, Tessa, and Christina had about being gay, it kind of made me feel uncomfortable. I just don't agree with her ways.
I wanted to bring this point up before, but I think now is the perfect moment. If you actually came onto this show, a fat person who hates skinny people, a black person who hates the whites, a gay person who hates straights, I actually can't imagine a place that would solidify these emotions more. Because all that we've seen, what the entire show has been about up to this point, is a kind of intersectional bigotry where it turns out that everyone who isn't a marginalized group hates people from that marginalized group. The whole house gangs up on John for being too fat. John and Gary gang up on B for being black. Gary and Christina gang up on Tessa for being gay. What lesson is there to learn for a gay woman but that breeders are stinky? That's what I think anyway. That would be my takeaway. Now we come to a new exercise, and this one's a barrel of laughs. What if we sat down, everyone, and just had them say why they're bigoted against each other? Get the skinhead, put him across from the black lady, and have him just say the N-word at her.
When me and B sat down and did our I Hate You exercise, it was real intense. B, you're an...
And that'll make everyone feel just a little bit more comfortable and add to the spirit of healing, which is really what this show, is all about. I think this moment is high art, personally, and that's because of Dr. Phil's reaction.
I hate you because you're taking over my country.
This just almost leaves me speechless that somebody can be this ignorant.
Well, this just leaves me speechless. I don't even know what's going on. When I had the idea to have everyone do the hate exercise, I never could have imagined an outcome like this. Dr. Phil's whole shtick on this show is just pretending to not know what bigotry is so that he can, mug for the camera. What's going on? What? And that's good. That's a good shtick.
Be waited on.
I'm not white. I'm Native American.
Whatever.
So largely, everything goes as you'd expect. The bigots are horrible, and all the people they're bigoted against say they don't like that.
I believe murder and homosexuality goes hand in hand.
Christina, you're superficial, self-centered, and flat-out ignorant.
But then, an interesting interaction happens between Stacy, Tess, and John.
She can go around and picking on all the big people.
And you can go around picking on skinny people, and that's okay.
It is okay.
Then why are you here? Why the are you here if you think it's okay?
It is.
That's the whole point of this show, is to prove that it's really not okay.
So that's weird, right? John says, yes, I think it's okay to make fun of skinny people, and Stacy says, then why are you here? But the reason he's here, I would have thought, is that he thinks it's okay to make fun of skinny people. That's the entire concept of the show. This moment strikes at a deep contradiction within Dr. Phil's House of Hatred, one that you'll see a few times over the course of the show. Put simply, nobody knows how they're supposed to feel about bigotry. Take Gary the skinhead. From the very start of the show, Gary talks about how he's here because he wants to change, because he wants to not be a bigot.
Well, I'm here for a reason, to get help.
But if that's the case, why is he still a white supremacist? If he thinks it's wrong to hold racist beliefs, he must also believe that those racist beliefs are wrong. Otherwise, what's the point in changing them? But he doesn't change them. He just keeps thinking racism is good for most of the show, and he's upset by the fact that he's expected to magically have different beliefs.
When I was told to come here, asked to come here, they told me to be myself. I was myself, and I got dogged on for it.
Here's the problem, and it's an obvious one. Dr. Phil's House of Hatred is a show about resolving bigotry, but it's also a show about being bigoted, showing off how much of a bigot you are. And this places the concept of bigotry in an impossible position where it is accepted and rejected in the same breath. You must think it's okay to hate skinny people, but know that that position is actually wrong. It's very strange. Anyway, the game ends, and the next important scene is a conversation between Christina and Tess. Christina explains that she hates gay people because her mother had a girlfriend and chose that girlfriend over her.
Nothing was ever told to me. Nobody ever said anything to me. And then all of a sudden, this woman's bringing her stuff into the house.
Christina explains all of this, and then she seems kind of annoyed that Tess doesn't just excuse her bigotry because of this new tragic tale.
I can't even begin to comprehend what her mother might have felt. But for Christina to now blame all homosexuals for what her mother did is sort of taking the easy way out.
I don't think Tessa received it well. Yeah, she had a lot of, bad experiences because she had to deal with all the straight people telling her about her lifestyle. But to go through what I went through and for her not to understand it was really hard for me.
I don't know what to make of this moment, but frankly, I do find it very funny. What did you want Tess to say? Oh my god, I'm so sorry. I guess it's okay that you hate gay people now. I completely get it. considering your mom. Dr. Phil emerges like a terrifying robot from the wall. He truly is Big Brother on this show. He is always there, lingering in the television.
We were sitting at the dining room table when Dr. Phil appeared on the pop-up screen.
And one must ask, looking at the secret Dr. Phil television, why? Why is it like that? Why don't you just go to the house, Dr. Phil? You put all these bigots in the house and then just left them to rot. You go to see them for like 20 minutes 3 times and just call it a day. Why don't you care about them?
When the screen popped up and Dr. Phil was on the screen, I was like, okay, something good is gonna happen.
So anyway, again, I can't wait to see you, Dr. Phil, and that whole TV thing, that was really, really cool, man.
That's crazy. About what happened with the mystery TV. Phil tells everyone that their next assignment is to come up with 3 questions they want to ask him.
I want you to be thinking about 3 things that you personally want to ask me.
This moment truly gets at the joy of lost media, because let me tell you something, we never see these questions getting asked. They just drop it. Is that because we simply don't have these parts of the show? Maybe. It would seem strange for it not to be there given how long this question thing would take, but who knows? I don't know what the truth is, but I choose to believe that everyone just forgot about it, that Phil didn't want to hear their questions, and they just cut it out of the show. Episode 3. So let's play a little game. Dr. Phil pairs off the bigots with the people they're bigoted against, and they do little bonding exercises together. Tess and Christina, for example, go rock climbing and have to do trust falls together. With all that in mind, what do you think the other pairs are going to do in this episode? Feel free to pause here and write your guess down below. Blackface. They do blackface. Stacy puts on a fat suit and marches around town, but the audio is corrupted for that bit, so thankfully we don't have to hear it. Gary does blackface. It doesn't look good either. I mean, of course it's not gonna look good, but I would say he looks especially insane.
I'm black.
B seems pretty excited about it, but I'm not really sure I agree with her assessment.
This is really amazing. It's just amazing. He looks like a black man.
At this point, they run down to the basketball court so Gary can try out his new identity, and he learns that maybe black people aren't so bad.
It feels kind of good. You know what I mean? I can get their perspective on life and see how it is living as a black man. It's
night now, and blackface skinhead Gary goes around the neighborhood yelling at random people stuff like, "Where can I get a good pizza? Do you know where Baja Fresh is?"
You know where Baja Fresh is?
Oh, that smells good. Where'd you get that from?
Hey, that smells good. Where'd you get that from?
For the record, he looks like this the entire time. When people aren't really helpful with him and his demands, he learns that maybe black people do have it rough in this country, and I guess, he just stops being racist after that.
I'm not getting the answers out of simple questions.
The show comes to an end now, and Dr. Phil has a final talk with 4 of the 6 members. I don't know if he ever talked to Christina and Tess, if we just don't have that section on video, but in any case, the conversations that do exist are all strange and horrible in their own ways. Let's start with B. By the end of the show, B is happy. She's developed, I guess, a rich relationship with Gary, and she's ready to do great things with her life.
Okay, and you just kind of walk like this, you know, just casual, like, hey, you know.
Okay, so like this?
That's cool, yeah.
That's great, you know, I have no problem with B, but the only issue is she never actually had to fix anything about herself. She had no actual arc on the show. Do you remember the first episode where she gets mad at John and Gary for being racist pigs to her? Well, even now, even a week later, this is still the only troubled moment that Dr. Phil refers to.
You had given your power away to some white guys that were pissing you off.
Yeah.
And when you did that, you let them take your dignity.
You yelled at white supremacists one time, but, you know, look how far you've come. Absolutely magical, the change we've seen in you, B. Anyway, let's move on to Gary. So, Gary ends the show less racist, I guess. He cooks dinner for B and her friends, and says he wouldn't call them the N-words anymore.
After tonight, I would not call B and her friends no. I'd call them actually African American.
In his conversation with Phil, though, something interesting happens.
You made a decision early on that you didn't have any worth or value. Your father hurt you early on. He made you ashamed, and there wasn't anything you could do about it, was there?
No,
And you wanted to.
I was afraid.
But what are you going to do when you're a little kid? And ever since, you've been trying to find somebody that you could feel superior to. Color, race, you've been trying to find somebody that you could put down so you could feel superior.
That's right. Phil explains Gary's racism with trauma. This isn't the only time he does this. Earlier in the show, Phil says something very similar about Christina.
This hatred has nothing to do with gay people. It has to do with a sense of betrayal she feels with her mother.
You're not actually bigoted. You don't actually care about gay people. This is all a response to childhood trauma. Now, I'm not going to disagree with Phil entirely here. I think it's possible that an abusive parent could lead to someone having unproductive, harmful beliefs of various kinds. But clearly, that's not all or even most of the story. There are obviously many people with abusive parents who don't go on to become skinheads, because skinheadism is a very particular ideology that comes from a very particular environment, a racist environment. There are two facts we can say pretty clearly about Gary's father, at least as he's described on this show. First, he was horrible and physically abusive. Second, he was a skinhead who advocated skinhead beliefs to his children.
I took a choice of taking my dad's footsteps.
And yet, in Phil's analysis, he doesn't even mention the second fact. Gary was made to feel small when he was young. Now he's racist because he wants to feel big. And that's all we have to say. I could write a whole essay about this kind of logic, and someday I think I will, but for now, I'll just say that Phil's approach to Gary and Christina speaks to a kind of fear of politics. If we were to accept that homophobia and racism emerge not from simple trauma, but from genuine political ideologies shared in conservative communities, then we'd have to think critically about the world we're living in, about the reality that people take these beliefs seriously, that they come from somewhere, mean something. And Phil just doesn't want to do that. Perhaps he can't do that. And so he makes a show about hatred that is afraid of looking hatred in the eyes. If, after all, racism is a coping mechanism for your bad father, it's almost like it doesn't exist at all. Let's move on to Stacy. So, I guess the fat suit worked on her. Stacy doesn't hate fat people anymore.
Me really being able to put myself in that position definitely made me realize what it would be like if I was overweight.
Phil must be some kind of genius, because he knows that if you take fat phobes and put them in sumo costumes, they're going to be singing a different tune by the end of that afternoon, and that's a Dr. Phil capital P promise. The really horrible thing about this conversation, though, is the end. So, for some reason, John is in the room with Stacy and Phil, like he's just sitting there, and that's not the case for any of the other talks that Phil has. After congratulating Stacy on her incredible fat suit progress, Phil says this.
If this guy weighed 170 pounds and had the same attitude, you wouldn't like him very much, would you?
No, I wouldn't like him.
I think you think that boy is lazy, manipulative, and just fundamentally dishonest.
Yes, I do.
Look at this filthy, dumb, dishonest piece of shit. I bet you wouldn't like him no matter what. I don't care what kind of person John is. This moment is evil. And so we come to our last contestant we can talk about, John, because his conversation with Phil is so strange, and that's mostly because of the first moment.
So how are you doing?
I changed a lot being here. I'm eating less.
It's interesting that when I said, how are you doing, you started discussing your weight, when what you presumably came here for was the fact that you hated skinny people. You came in here and tried to run a con.
I don't even know how to react to this scene. It genuinely boggles my mind. For one thing, the only thing Phil ever talked about concerning John is his weight. He made a big production about how this is his last chance, about how everyone should be helping him to get skinnier.
This is probably his last chance. This is probably his last stop on the subway.
But now he turns around and reprimands the guy talking about his body? Literally, how dare you? And this leads me to the broader points here. Phil, none of the oppressed people you brought onto this show actually hate the opposite group. I've already talked about this like 30 times, and I won't belabor it here, but B doesn't sincerely hate white people, Tess doesn't sincerely hate straight people, it's all bullshit, obviously. It is not John who is lying here, it is the show. It is the entire premise of this show. Dr. Phil's House of Hatred is over, and we are left here alone, and what is there to say about a show like this? I don't know. I could say that it is the most broken piece of media I have ever seen. The premise doesn't make sense, and it is not executed on, and what the show does do, it does poorly and offensively. I could say that Dr. Phil is a freak. He is retiring this year, 2023, and I think it makes sense to see him off by focusing on his absolute lowest moment, a low in a sea of lows. But I think I'll end here on this note. Some of you may wonder why I care about this show, why I wanted to see it for so long, why I'm invested in exploring it, and I think the answer to that question is kind of simple. In 2006, Dr. Phil brought 6 ostensible bigots into his house and made 3 episodes of TV about them. The results were horrible. He showed a stunning lack of understanding for what bigotry is. He left participants with very little guidance and no discernible goal. He put people in blackface and fat suits. He bullied a fat participant and encouraged everyone else to do the same. And for all that, nobody cared. This was not a news story at the time, and in the intervening years, it has been all but forgotten. If you look up the show now, you'll find an empty IMDb page, you'll find a random thread from 2006, you'll find the video I made trying to locate the show, and you'll find a thread where people talk briefly about finding it for me. And yet, even as it has been relegated to the annals of history, even as it went unnoticed in its time, a bit of meaningless background noise on daytime television, when you actually watch it, it feels momentous. The show is so surreal, so sensational, so ridiculous that I have a hard time understanding how it ever got made, how anyone thought it was a good idea. It was made less than 20 years ago. I was alive and sentient at the time. I could have seen it when it first aired. But it feels like it was made in a world I cannot imagine, a strange alien planet. Dr. Phil's House of Hatred is a fever dream from which we cannot wake, and there has to be something valuable in remembering a thing like that. Wow, that was pretty spooky. House of Hatred, can you imagine? That's right, that was a Halloween video, and I did that on purpose. That was intentional. If you want some other spooky stuff, though, you should sign up for my streaming service, Nebula. It's downright ghoulish, the deal they have going. Every month I upload a bonus video on that platform. I have so many currently there, and this month I'm talking about online discourse and tragedy and the way we talk about horrible events. It's a kind of strange one. I haven't finished it yet, but it'll be out in like a week, and we'll see how I feel about it when it's done. You also get my videos, Big and Little Joel, early and ad-free, so that's a plus. You don't just get me on Nebula, though. The deal is way more of a treat than that. Or is it a trick? Lindsay Ellis exclusively releases on Nebula, PhilosophyTube had her play produced by Nebula, and Jacob Geller has bonus videos on the platform. It's $30 for the whole year, so I think it's a really good deal. So if you're interested in any of that, go to the link in my description. So that's it. That's the video. I hope you enjoyed it. It was super, super fun for me to make. I was happy to have finally made it. On that note, it's now time for my Patreon question of the week. PPFart420 asks, if you could turbocharge one of your senses, sight, hearing, etc., what would it be? That's a hard one. That's a hard one because it could so easily be a curse. I mean, you don't want to supercharge smell or hearing. You don't want to supercharge touch. You don't really want to supercharge taste, do you? I mean, you don't really want that. I mean, maybe that could be okay, but I think it could make things disgusting tasting. I'd be worried. So in the end, I'd have to choose the obvious, sight. I guess that's a boring answer to a fun question. Sorry about that. But at the same time, you know, one of my biggest policies on this channel, and always has been on this channel, to not lie. Thank you for watching the video. I'll see you next time. Bye. Oh, Dr. Phil, you're a nasty guy. Everybody hates you, but I don't know why. You have got a big bald egg head, and you treat people with disrespect. You brought in a bigot and the person he hates in something you like to call your house of hatred. You did a nasty thing, and that's the truth. Dr. Phil. Ooh, Dr. Phil. Ooh.